Good afternoon, everyone. Live from Silicon Valley, California. This is Spiritual Fitness. My name is JM, and I welcome you all to another episode where we'll discuss how to declare your independence with your host, Vaish, a veteran Bhakti yogi, author, and former monk. We're close to 15 members on Zoom and 10 members on Facebook. I have Anshu helping me out in managing social media today. Good afternoon, Vaish. Welcome back to Spiritual Fitness.
Thanks a lot, Jay. I'm really happy to be back here. Great to see you all. I missed you. We thought we'd follow up from Independence Day. Why one Independence Day? Why not make every day Independence? Really, it's something that as free-willed, that's a hyphenated word, living beings, we look for independence. Every creature has a sense of free will, even in a dormant state. We notice plants doing their own thing, growing in their own ways. And certainly we can see from children as they're growing up, they want their independence. I wrote about this in one of my blogs many years ago, but I was walking in my hometown here on a daily walk, and I saw a father with his daughter. She must have been 3 or something. And as he was walking down the street, she was running away from him, albeit a little slowly, clippity clop. And he was keeping up okay just by walking a little faster. And as I came around the corner, another woman who I didn't know, and I had seen the same thing at the same time, which was the little girl running away from her father. And he looked at both of us, noticing her, and said, "She thinks she's independent." And as I kept walking, I ran that scenario through my mind. Actually, it's really true. She did have that determined look in her eye, like I'm going, I'm on my own now. And then the implausibility of that actually was striking because she's so young. She wouldn't last even a few minutes out there without her father behind her. And there's also this sense that a kind of not well-reasoned sense that we get as living beings, that I'm going to declare independence. For instance, we declared, in order to form America, independence from the crown. India got its independence, well, from the crown. And that there are various others in history. Of course, it's epic. There's so many attempts to have independence. Everyone wants their own identity. It happens on the corporate side also. There are people who break off when they want independence from the company, and they start competing companies, so forth. So independence is pervasive, and the way the wisdom literatures describe it is that this is due to our unique nature. Every single one of us is unique, and we have our own free will. And therefore, we're searching for this kind of independence. But are we really getting it? And this is much to the topic today. What is real independence? Now, when I'm moving about the world, I'm actually impelled by my by my mind, the conditions of my mind, or the conditioning of my mind to choose certain things, to live in a certain way. What to speak of my karma? There's a karmic influence I have that, well, let's say, has anybody here ever been in pursuit of money? Yeah? A couple of you? Come on. All right, yes. There's a yes. Yeah, so are you, all right, let me just put it this way is everybody a billionaire at this point? Few of you on here, I know. But why not everybody? Because there are certain limitations. In fact, it's described in the Srimad Bhagavatam that Tasyaiva heto prayate kovino na labhyate yad brahmatam uparayada. We come into this world with a kind of momentum in a certain direction. Some people have more capacity than others for material things. For spiritual, everyone has equal capacity, can develop unlimited capacity. But in our material dealings, I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but you can try harder, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everything will fall into place. Part of the explanation for this is that we have our karma coming in from last life. Karma just means the work we've done previously. To give a very mundane example, if you're in an apartment, you have to get a new one, you have to count up and see how much you can afford. I mean, how much can I afford now? Do I have to move to Kansas or Iowa to afford an apartment now? Or can I still live in San Francisco? Not an easy task. So we can afford certain kinds of material things when we come into this world. So there are delimiting factors in our independence. And what to speak of the ways that the mind actually gives us suffering, how to become free from that suffering of the mind. In fact, all suffering comes from the mind. It's a product of the way that we're seeing the world through the lens of the mind that causes us to suffer, according to the wisdom literatures. So today we're going to talk about what it means to declare real independence. And if anybody's up for that, let's have some fireworks on here. I'll start it off. They didn't have a fireworks icon, so I thought that was good enough. Come on, only JM put it up there. You all know how to use Zoom. The other day I was on a Zoom call and someone said, I don't know how to use the icon. I said, where you been for the last year and a half? How could anybody not know how to use icons on Zoom these days? We know every inch of Zoom for having lived here for a while, right? So we're going to do our meditation at the end today, because I'd like to go through this sequence of slides and tell you how this theory works of getting independence from the mind and what are some of the steps. And then as one of the steps, we're going to do a little bit of meditation at the end to actually take advantage of it. Does that sound okay? I'll need at least one third of you to put a thumbs up. Ava, thank you. Come on, put your thumbs up. VV174, Yashash Mahendrakar, thank you. Lakshman, Subramaniam, Soumya, Nilet, Zaime, Zhao, sorry for not pronouncing your names properly. Sonali, we're getting close to a third. Okay, looks pretty good. Linda, thank you very much, as usual.
Yeah, so not just thumbs up, we also have a hands up.
A hands up too. Okay. All right.
Subhadra, do you want to ask the questions that we had, maybe?
No, but my Chromebook doesn't have a thumbs up. It only has a hand. So sorry.
She's expressing her independence by using the hand up. Okay, so let's go into the presentation, and we start off with the 5 kleshas. Klesha means suffering. So there are 5 kleshas, and these are conditions of mind or afflictions of the mind that cause us to suffering, and they're in these categories. Avidya. So as most of you know, vidya means knowledge, and avidya means no knowledge, means ignorance. That I don't know who I am. I don't know where I came from. And I mistake those things which are temporary to be permanent. At least I act like I'm going to be here forever. This is called ignorance. This is a cause of suffering, because if you're assuming that you're going to be around forever and everybody around you is going to be around forever, then sooner or later you will be disillusioned because it'll move on. You'll move on. They'll move on. Everything else will move on. Your whoever you voted for will move on, and then you'll get some other kind of thing going on. These things, as we all know, are always going on in our lives, and it causes us suffering because of avidya. And the second one is called asmita, which means ego. My sense of I am the doer. I'm doing everything. Actually, we're being carried along, as I was partially describing, talking about karma, through forces that are beyond our control. We do have a modicum of freedom while we're in our lives, but consider this: when you leave this body at the time of passing, you don't have any freedom. You're leaving it in the hands of somebody else, as if somebody's putting you in a car and say, "Where are we going?" And say, "Just be quiet. We're taking you there." That's the way it is. So we don't get a lot of choice at that time. So if you're going to express your freedom, now's the time. But through ego, we forget that we're not this body, and we assume that I am an American, I'm a European, I'm an Indian, and I'm man, I'm a woman, I'm a cat, or I'm a dog. And this is a mistake because we're actually a spiritual living being, a person, but we're not the body. Raga and dvesha go together, attachment and aversion. Everyone is predisposed because of previous impressions to be attached to certain things and averse to certain things. And then the last one is called abhinibesha, which means clinging to life. I've been in many, many lives, and because of that, I know that death is painful, and I try to avoid the topic as much as possible. So who's happy in the world? One of the wisdom texts called Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita says, Krishna Bhakta Nishkam Ataeva Shanta Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami Sakali Ashanta. What that means, it's a Bengali verse. It means that Nishkam Ataiva Shanta, those who are Nishkam means they don't have any material desires. They're Shanta, they're peaceful. By the way, that's where Santa Claus comes from. Shanta Claus. Santa means like peaceful or saintly. And Bhukti Mukti Siddhi Kami. So it names people like Bhukti means you want material things. Mukti means you want to give up everything. You want to just be free from the whole deal altogether. And Siddhi means that you want to attain some mystic perfection. A long time ago, during the pandemic, I gave some classes about mystic perfections that one can attain through yoga. And sometimes people want to attain these. These are all material desires ultimately. So Sakali Ashanta means that all these types of people are not peaceful because they want something. So if you're Ashanta, means you have no desire for yourself, you're up for selfless service, then you'll become peaceful. So the questions that are most important and pressing are, who am I? What is this world? Why am I here? And most people, when they're confronted with these questions, or when they start to entertain them, feel that it's too mysterious. There's too many different opinions. Everyone's vying for presenting their philosophy, and therefore, how can I accept any of them? I'll just forget about the whole thing. I won't pursue it. There's no answer at all. There's no cure. There's no answer. So this is a situation in which we just surrender ourselves to the flow of material nature and forget about asking these questions. But the wisdom literature said, no, actually, you're capable of understanding these. It requires a kind of culture or process, a spiritual process that you can take to. So what is our main problem? The problem is that we're looking through the prism of our mind. Did you ever look through a prism? Anybody? I was fascinated by prisms when I was a kid. My father brought one home for my brother and me. And we'd hang it up, and in the window it would refract. Is that the right word? Somebody check that out. Refract the light. It would divide it up, and it would make rainbows on the wall and things like that. And if you look through the prism, you'd see the world in a kind of fractured way, and it's not accurate. Another way of seeing or describing the mind that's not peaceful is like water on the top of a pond that gets disturbed. When there's ripples there, you can't really see accurately what's underneath. So when the mind becomes disturbed, it's like looking through a prism or looking into normally clear water through the agitation on top, and then you can't get an accurate view. Therefore, we don't know who we are. We can't see our actual spiritual identity, nor can we see the source of our identity and where we come from. So when we have a steady mind through the practice of yoga, meditation, then we get a high resolution of the world. And don't you hate low res pictures? You know, there's a beautiful picture, but then somebody sends it to you in a way that's so low res that when you open it up, it looks like the lotus flower on the right-hand side. You know it's there, but you just can't get it. So when the mind is steady, it sharpens the image. We're actually able to see ourselves the way we are and see the world the way it is. Think high res. Don't go for the low res stuff. Therefore, the Yoga Sutra says, Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha. Yoga means the stilling of the mind. Once that chitta, mind, becomes stilled, then we can actually see our real nature. We can become aware of who we are and what's going on in the world. And what is the mind actually? You can skip to the next one. It's called chitta. So a few misunderstandings which to be clarified. One is that your brain is not your mind. Your brain is like a radio that picks up waves and then turns them into vibrations that we can decipher. So it's not that the radio makes sound by itself. It has to have the modulation, sound modulation, the waves coming into it, then it interprets it. So the brain can't work without the waves or the mind. And so the mind is called the chitta. And it's the subtle, it's also material, it's not us, but it's wave-like material that is extremely subtle and has different functions in order to take the information from the outside world and put it into categories that we can work with. And because it's subtle, you may notice this. Have you ever had your mind disturbed by somebody? Like at work, has anybody ever disturbed your mind? I'm looking to see, everyone's smiling, but I don't know what you're smiling about. Maybe you can tell me. What happens sometimes? What disturbs your mind? I mean, let's just think about it for a minute. I mean, what is it that's being disturbed? Somebody said yes. I'm looking into the chat box now. Cannot focus on anything. Megalgu. Bijan, what disturbed your mind sometime, or anybody?
Yeah, if there is something which is not desirable or not expected or does not comply with my thought pattern, which I think that it is the better one, and always as an individual. So something which is resisted by people or something you feel stressed, right, and disturbed.
You're so good at that, to speaking extemporaneously. You just gave such a clear definition. Thank you very much, Bijan. Can anybody think of a circumstance in which their mind was disturbed? Can you think back to a time when somebody or something disturbed your mind? Let's just have a couple. I want specifics, details. Work with me, people.
Watching the news.
Watching the news any day of the week, right? Who said that?
Sophia.
Thanks, Sophia. Yeah, watching the news. Can you think of a specific time or era when you were watching the news and your mind got disturbed?
Sandy Hook.
Oh, it goes in deep. Yeah. Yep. Okay. So we actually notice it. Death of a close relative can do it. Rejection in a relationship can rock your mind for months, months, years. So we all know what it's like. We all know what it's like to have a disturbed mind. So the mind is extremely subtle, and there are circumstances in our lives where the mind can be stirred up. It can become disturbed. Those who become advanced spiritually have a title. They're called dhira. This is one of the titles, dhira. Somebody maybe can write it in the chat box. And this means the mind doesn't become disturbed, even when there's causes for disturbance, even when there are people or news events that would normally disturb us, the mind stays steady. Doesn't mean we're unfeeling or we don't have compassion, but the mind doesn't get rocked so easily because one has stilled the mind. So we can keep that in mind, so to speak, that the chitta is sensitive and can be easily influenced. And that's why we notice as we move about in the world and we view certain things, hear certain things, we feel, oh, I'm disturbed. What's disturbed? My mind is disturbed. So we can take information from these wisdom literatures to understand that the conscious self is different from the body. But when the mind is oscillating, we think we are our bodies. So an oscillating mind, the mind that's disturbed, is prone to taking shelter of the conception that I am this material body. And this compounds the suffering, because I'm not the temporary material body, but when I identify with the material body, then I suffer, because the body is always changing. And it's full of changes, actually. It's changing at every second. So we might think, like, where can we see this in a very graphic way? When we fall asleep at night, when we dream, we imagine ourselves in different bodies. We're in a physical body right now, and our physical bodies, for some of us, are being projected on a screen. And also, when we go to sleep at night, we may fall asleep and dream, and we may imagine ourselves in different situations and in different bodies. Has anybody ever, while they're sleeping, have you ever gone to work? Have you gone to your workplace and did a little extra time? Yeah? Did you get paid for it? Well, the wisdom literatures say, you're doing the same thing in your waking state. You're thinking, like, this is such and such, this is what I do. And we're actually, in another sense, in this state of avidya or ignorance. We're kind of in another stage of dreaming. I'm dreaming I'm this body. I'm dreaming that something is happening to me. I just lost my job, or I just got a job and I'm joyful. I'm dancing down the street. it's parallel to the dream world that we live in. Dream world, it might morph very quickly. In our waking state, we may find a partner, and then we're happy, and then we have a honeymoon period, and then it turns out the person is not who we thought he or she was, and they change physically, they change mentally, everything changes, and then the person who turned out to be the object of your love and vision and affection, turns out to be like, oh, I hate you, and I hate you back, and all these things, they happen all the time. Maybe a little more slowly in our waking state, but in a dreaming state, they happen rapidly. But it's the same situation. We're looking at the outer world through the lens of the mind, through the prism of the mind, and we're seeing refracted life situations, which actually have nothing to do with us. So that dreaming state is pervasive when we're living with a mind that is not in control and still. So yoga, this is a statement in the Bhagavad Gita. If you want to know what yoga means, here's one of the definitive statements. Samatvam yoga uchate. So sama means to be equal. So samatvam means the state of equilibrium. And yoga means yoga, and uchate means is called. So equanimity of mind is called yoga. So when we attain this dhira, the state of the mind being not disturbed by the changes of the world and not influenced by ignorance or by attraction and repulsion and by death, the absorption in avoiding death, which is really, death really means that I feel that I'm losing everything that I am. You can't lose who you are because you are who you are always. But when you imagine that you're something and then that changes, then they say, oh, I'm dying. So samatvam yoga uchate. Try to attain this state of equilibrium of mind, and you'll be in the state of yoga. Who wants to be in the state of yoga? One person raised their hand. One, just Subhadra. Okay, everyone else. Okay, Abhi's in. Aditya, Mayank, Linda, come on. Where are you? All right, good. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of the mind. The mind expands and contracts. So when the chitta, we're calling the mind the chitta. When the chitta is expanded, it's peaceful. So imagine like a larger body of water, even larger than that bowl that little fish is in, like a lake. It's expansive. The fish can move around. It won't make any turbulence because it's so vast. Whereas if you put a big fish in a small bowl like that, it'll flop around and the water will come spraying out. And similarly, when our mind is expanded, then we don't feel oppressed by it. We don't feel the turbulence. And similarly, the mind stuff actually, the chitta, is under the three major influences of this world, which are called the modalities or the modes. So these are sattva, rajas, and tamas. You probably all memorized these by now. Either that or you got a tattoo on the back of your arm. Sattva, when your mind is expanded, we're in a state of sattva or peacefulness. Rajas, the mind is slightly contracted. And in tamas, it's completely contracted. So have you ever had been in a state of mind where you're just like tired and you can't deal with the world anymore? So what do? You just go to sleep. I can't deal with it anymore. The mind just crunched together, everything compacted. It's like, okay, just conk out, go to sleep. you're in tamas. And in rajas, the mind's contracted slightly. I'm running around, I'm working in various ways to try to hit various goals. And in sattva, I realize that, well, where is there to go? You're peaceful right where you are. So the mind is made out of these modalities, and it can be amended. In other words, the mind can be improved according to the way we live. And that is a kind of culture. So that's really the main point of my presentation today, is you can free your mind by culture. Let me look the word up really quickly. I'll tell you what culture means. Culture, the arts and other manifestations, the customs and arts, the cultivation of bacteria, the cultivation of plants to maintain in conditions suitable for growth. I like that, the verb. To maintain in conditions suitable for growth. So everybody knows about plants and your physical body and so forth, but your mind has to have a culture through which it can grow, it can expand. And that culture that you can institute in your life through which your mind can expand is called Sanskriti. Sanskriti is a kind of culture, and it means the culture that contributes to freeing your mind. So it doesn't happen automatically, it doesn't happen by chance, it happens by application. The word sang means completely, and krit means formed. So Sanskrit, that's really the name of a language which is completely formed. And so similarly, the culture through which our minds becomes refined is called Sanskriti. So there's two states that we can be in. One is called Prakriti, that's our natural state, and the other is called Vikriti, distorted. So when I'm in a distorted situation, when the mind is distorted, then the whole world is distorted for me, and I suffer, and I'm bound by the mind. So in very simple terms and related to very prominent Sanskrit words, sukha and dukkha. Su means beautiful, and ka means your inner atmosphere. Did you know you have an inner atmosphere? Did you look at your smartphone today and find out what your inner atmosphere is going to be? I think in Sacramento today, it's supposed to be 111 degrees. That's the outer atmosphere. Have you ever felt like your inner atmosphere was at 111 degrees? What does it feel like? I remember once in Mumbai, previously called Bombay, I was waiting for an elevator, also called a lift. I was in the lobby of a hotel that didn't have air conditioning. It was sort of an outdoor type of thing. And I couldn't imagine waiting much longer than the other 10 seconds it took to catch that, because it was so hot and humid there. I was practically ready to expire. That's the external environment. We can feel the oppressive nature of it. So we also have an inner environment. And according to our inner environment, it's either beautiful or distorted. So when it's beautiful, when our inner environment is beautiful, it's called sukha, beautiful space, open space. When we get all contracted and our minds are distorted and disturbed, and it's called dukkha. So those words, sukha means happiness, actually, and dukkha means suffering or distress. Enjoyment and distress. Where does it come from? Our minds. The origin is the mind and the state of the mind. Can you do anything about it? Let's stop before I go into the last few slides. I want to know what you think. Can anything be done, or should we just go with the flow and give up? What do you think? Let's hear I want to hear some opinions. Wolf asked a question. He said, please help to address mental episodes like bipolar and depression, please. These are extreme states of disturbance of the mind. It's like there are some kinds of psychotropic, I think that's the right term. There are certain drugs. You may be sitting there on your couch in a beautiful living room, but you might be seeing that you're going down Niagara Falls. Everyone else around you is thinking, like, you're just sitting there. What's the problem? But because your mind is oscillating, you're seeing the carpet turn into water, and then the couch turns into a boat, and you're going over the falls. Possible? You don't have to say if it ever happened to you. But so when the mind becomes disturbed, like in various ways, we have different kinds of conditions. Okay, let's hear, JM, what else do we have? I'm stealing your job here.
Okay. I think Wolf came on. I don't know, Wolf, do you have any questions you want to ask?
No, it will probably take another 4 hours to discuss. The question was more of those folks who are experiencing the mental episodes. Is the connection between the mind and the body and the brain, and how is it all explained in the wisdom of literature? And there's anything advised there? That's why I say it might take another 4 hours of the conversation. But that's my surface level question, please.
Thank you, Wolf. Well, there is a way in which if your radio is out of order, then you could get a lot of static. So there is a case for the physical apparatus to be improved. There are various ways in which that can be done. There can be chemical imbalances, which cause the very apparatus through which, the subtle mind is, through which it's operating, has to be dealt with. And then there's, on the subtle level, the ways in which the chitta itself becomes disturbed. So either way, in order to come to the state of having a balanced mind, there needs to be some adjustment. And in the process of yoga and so forth, like in the culture of Sanskriti, there are ways in which the physical body is also attended to medicinally in order to balance the energy centers within the body, or to heal. Actually, a lot of, for instance, Ayurvedic medicine has to do with opening energy channels or balancing them so that you can heal yourself. There's a lot done with that, rather than trying to counteract exactly what's happening. But in modern medicine too, there are certain ways in which chemicals and so forth are used in order to try to get things back in balance on a physical level.
Okay, I think RK has her hand up. Do you want to ask a question, or was it raised in accident?
I think she was volunteering before to be part of the experiment.
Okay. Sure. Bijan has his hand up. So please go ahead.
Yeah, so Prabhuji, I have one question about this mind, the radio frequency that we're talking about. But the fundamental question is that why mind thinks that this is my body? Why cannot my mind think, who am I really?
Well, the mind is part of the body. We have two bodies. We have a gross physical body and we have a subtle physical body. And they're both made out of material nature. One's subtle and one's gross. However, when the mind is distorted, that's a better term for it. When it's distorted, there's a way in which we don't have clarity about who we are. We can't see who we are. So you can't, when you look into a pond that is disturbed, you don't see what's at the bottom. It's kind of murky and distorted. So our vision of the world and of ourself becomes murky and distorted when the mind is in a contaminated state or in a distorted state. And there's a kind of information loop that occurs. First of all, there's perception that takes place. We have to actually look at something and pay attention to it to perceive it. For instance, if you're reading a book and you're not paying attention, you don't really perceive what you're reading, do you?
Right. Yeah.
Right. So somebody might say, what did you just read? And you say, I have no idea. I don't know. My eyes touched it, but I didn't perceive it. So first there's perception, and after perception comes interpretation. So the mind is interpretative. It picks up information from the outside world and it categorizes it in various ways. And then our intellect analyzes the category. When the mind's distorted, we don't see things properly. Our power of interpretation is not accurate. And then the third thing that happens after the interpretation, if we misinterpret, then the body reacts. For instance, let's just say if you're walking along in your garden and you think you're just about to step on a snake, and you jump up high, and as you do, your hair stands on end, and you let out a cry, and you're in a state of fear, and then you land, and you see that actually it was a garden hose. But in the process, and this happens all the time, I misinterpret something from the world, and then my body reacts. And then my mind then looks at the body reacting and said, aha, it must be true. And so I get into this loop. And so part of karma is being caught in this loop. I begin with this false identification with myself as the body, and then it gets constantly reinforced by my experiences in the world. And until I get outside knowledge and a process, more importantly, samskriti, by which I can purify the mind, I can refine it and bring it into sharp focus. At that point, I can actually see things as they are. And this is the definition of knowledge given in the Bhagavad Gita as an example. Kshetrajnam chapimam vidhi sarva kshetrishu bharata. Kshetrajnayo jnanam yatach jnanam matam mama. Vidya, the opposite of ignorance, means to clearly see the difference between yourself and your body. The body is called a field, and you're the knower of the field. You're not the field. So that happens when you're able to purify the mind. Bijan, I hope that helped.
Yeah, that helps.
Oh, good.
Thank you very much. But I have a follow-up question, but I'll let others give a chance, so I can keep quiet for some time.
Well, don't keep quiet for too long. Your questions are so good.
Thank you.
What else we got on the board? And then we'll come back to Bijan if we have time.
There are a couple of more reflection, I think, to past question. One is from Mayank saying, increase mode of sattva to expand the mind. Bijan said, train your mind. Shubha, control the mind.
Okay, this point about sattva. Sattva is a modality that can be achieved by culture. It's a modality of the mind that can be achieved by culture. It has a lot to do with lifestyle. The way we organize our lives, we can either be in sattva, rajas, or tamas. When we associate with people and environments that are in rajas, we become very rajas. Rajas means I'm ambitious. Nothing wrong with these things in and of themselves. They can all be utilized for a higher purpose. But the point is that we're highly influenceable by because of our environment. So coming to sattva is a good platform from which to practice spiritual awareness, to come to spiritual awareness. That's the highest rung on the ladder where we can step into transcendence. So here's the statement: live in a way that brings about a gradual expansion of the citta. And there are actual practices to take up. So when your mind is still, you can see yourself. One of the experiences that is self-evident when one sees oneself: I never die, I've always existed. We don't have that when we're identified with the body, because I'm thinking about, like, okay, how do my nails look? How's my hair look? What's my bank account look like? What's going to happen to my nails? What's going to happen to my hair? What's going to happen to my bank account? And where am I? What's going to happen to me? Well, the body, it's not going to stick around. But if I'm identifying with it, I'm in this kind of existential anxiety constantly. But through a little vision of seeing clearly that I'll never die, I've always existed, which is fully possible through the process of samskriti, or a lifestyle in which we come to this state of stilling the mind, then we feel peace. And we feel freedom from the tyranny of the mind. And when the mind is a clear reflective surface, sometimes it's described as a mirror. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the great teacher of Bhakti Yoga, says, Cheto Dharpana Marjanam. The mind's like a mirror and has different layers of covering on it. Sometimes it's dusty, sometimes it's dirty, sometimes it's just caked in mud. So we have to clear it. And when it's clear, then we can also not only see ourself, but we can see the origin of ourself, our original conscious source. And this is really the beginning of the state of yoga, when we feel a union with our original conscious source. So about culture, we talk a lot about mantra. One of the famous mantras is called the Gayatri mantra. Gaya means song, so it's a song that you can sing that awakens you to your higher self. It's also called Veda Mata, or the mother of knowledge. How could that all come from a song? Well, it's a transcendental song, and the beginning of that is Om. We've chanted that mantra here before. And the big question is, can a spiritual mantra bring all the results of meditation? Yes. This is the statement of the wisdom literatures, because sound vibration is so powerful. And here's the point. There are different kinds of sound vibration. The kind of sound vibration I'm about to make is called hatha. Are you ready for some hatha sound? Could you hear that? That was definitely hatha, or struck sound. I made it again. It's an external sound caused by a collision of objects. The air shoots out, goes through the microphone, goes through I don't know how it gets to you. Somebody have to explain that to me. It comes out through your speaker system, hits your ear. There's an apparatus physically struck in your ear, and then it sends an impulse into your mind. Well, there's a different kind of sound. It's called anahata, unstruck. There is sound that's unstruck. I kind of proved that a little bit when we talked about the no sound chamber in Minneapolis, and how all the reporters who went there, there's no sound. There's it's negative decibels in there, decibels. And they said it's the loudest place they've ever been. Okay, what's unstruck sound? It's a sound you can hear in your heart without striking a physical object. So mantra is this language of the heart. And when you practice mantra, spiritual mantra, you enact or you evoke that unstruck sound, spiritual sound. It resonates with that spiritual sound that's within your heart already. And when you do that, it connects you to the spiritual energy that calms the mind, it clears the mind. As Chaitanya said, Cheto Dharpana Marjanam, that surface of the mind, the chitta, becomes refined, cleared, non-distorted. And then you can come to the state of yoga just by saying or singing the mantra. So finally, the last slide, I just wanted to present this this little definition, which Ishvara Pranidhan, this comes from the Yoga Sutra. Ishvara Pranidhan means this powerful way of coming in contact with our original conscious source through yoga. And the teacher of the Yoga Sutras, Patanjali, mentions that this is the actual shortcut process of yoga. And he recommends chanting mantra to come to this position. He says, from dedication or action-oriented devotion to original conscious source, one gets grace by which the fruits of yoga become readily available, all the fruits. So before I go into the last, the practice of mantra meditation, just mentioned that we have a regular program going on Thursdays now at 5:30 Pacific time. It's called Bhakti Circle. And we're systematically going through 52 weeks of explanation of very detailed aspects of yoga philosophy and the practice itself. And you can register. You can see on the scene. Boy, I'm really taking away all your stuff today, huh, JM? Sorry about that. I must be
I'm
really
liking it.
I'm jumping frisky over here. Okay, well, yeah, and it's been really good. People are joining from all over the world and coming on the Bhakti Circle. There's a lot of discussion. It's not just me talking at everybody like on here, but there are discussion groups, and it's been quite. Charles, how's it been?
I think I was on mute there, but it's been wonderful. I think, as you mentioned, I mean, I don't mind hearing you speak and share your wisdom. It's always great as well. But as you mentioned, we do also have the discussion groups, and I even had the opportunity to be in one with you in one of the smaller sessions. So definitely highly recommend.
Thank you very much, Charles. We'll give you your payment later for giving you.
And yeah, I wasn't paying cent yet. Just for the record.
And then Linda's a regular. She said, Bhakti Circle rocks. Me love. Fantastic. Anything else you want to pick up after the chat? Off of the chat there, JM?
Yeah, so people are asking how to join. So I just sent registration email. So please email hi@vaisheshikadas.com to register for Bhakti Circle, and we'll add you in. Yeah, so I think Roseanne asked for it. So, and same, thanks Linda for also sharing your reflections. So we have the 5 sessions which have completed, and next session we are planning a recap or summary. So those who have not joined, they can quickly come up to speed. So we'll have some Q&A around it. So yeah, looking forward to those who missed. Maybe you can join and come up to speed before we continue the remainder of the sessions.
It's a good idea. I like that. There's so many high-minded people coming on there from all over the world, and just there's a movie, there's topics to discuss, there's breakout rooms, and it's a relaxing, but at the same time, mentally stimulating kind of process. I like it a lot.
Shiv also agrees. It's really great.
Oh, good. Okay, so now let's just talk about PSS, which means fixing one's mind on a potent sound source, powerful sound source. There are different sounds we listen to that affect us in different ways, but there's a formula. Someone told us yesterday, it was Vlad, who was on Bhakti Circle. He gave me this little ditty that goes like this. A picture is worth 1,000 words, but a formula is worth 1,000 pictures. So formulas are great. That's why Coca-Cola is so popular. Nobody knows what's in that formula. So, and by the way, I'm not recommending. So the mantra is a spiritual formula. You may say, show me the picture, and say, just try the formula, and it's worth 1,000 pictures. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. So what do you do in this kind of yoga meditation? You fix your mind on a potent sound source. How do you know it's potent? Same way you know seeds are potent. You check out where they came from. You do a little research and look it up. When you know the source of the seeds and you know a little bit about how seeds work, or how, the theory behind how they work, then all you have to do is really plant them. And then what? What do you do after you plant them? Just want to make sure you're all paying attention. Plant and
Add
then
water.
Yes, thank you, Wolf. Okay, so you plant and water them. So the planting process means you just accept the mantra after you do a little research. And the kind of information I'm giving you before we go into the mantra meditation really is all about researching. It's giving you an idea that this is not willy-nilly. It's not a sentimental idea. There are it's a well thought out knowledge system. And so you could trust the source, or if you begin to trust the source by removing any kind of doubts that you have, then at least you can relax your eardrums long enough to take in this formula. You take it in through your ears, and that's the watering process. When you actually start using the mantra, saying it yourself, then you're watering that seed and it'll grow. Okay, so let's try it. I'm going to chant the mantra, Nitai Gauranga, 10 times. This is one of the mantras. It's been passed down through a channel of teachers over millennia. And you can just relax your eardrums for a minute. Sit up a little straighter than you were a second ago. Let your ears open. Can you do that? Put your attention on your ears and let them open. Let the eardrum relax. And then I'm going to say the mantra 10 times. And as I'm saying it, please try repeating it. Use your vocal cords and then let the potent sound source go into your ears. And then keep your mind fixed on the sound. That's all you have to do. I'm going to start now. Nitai Gauranga. 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 And now let's do the next mantra. This mantra is called the Maha Mantra. And it goes like this. I'll say the mantra 5 times. You can follow along and just listen to the sound vibration. Relax your eardrums again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Yeah, we could come back in the room and Those two mantras are very well known, passed down through well-known channels over many, many years. And when you do those two mantras, you're in the big leagues of mantra chanting. And you can practice your yoga and bringing the mind to this pristine state by listening to the potent sound source. I recommend trying it at least in the morning once, and if you can add on before you go to bed at night. And keep a little journal. You can notice how it's working out for you when you do your chanting every day. And if you do it consistently over 10, 20 or so days, you'll start noticing a marked change in your mind and your consciousness from the practice. Thank you very much, everybody. I just ran through from pillar to post today with all the information because we had a lot to cover. But I was really happy to be back and look forward to seeing you next week. Now, I don't
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhu.
you.
I don't know if you know this or not, but high in the Himalayas, the yogis who live in caves and meditate all day long sometimes come out to find some roots. And when they see each other on the path, they raise their hands and they say, keep the transcendental vibration going, which in Sanskrit is Hari Bol. So since we're in little caves, let's say goodbye to everybody by saying Hari Bol.
Haribol.
See you soon. Keep the
Haribol.
vibration going.